Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Voices of Forestry podcast. I'm your host, Seth Stephenson, the communications coordinator with the Arkansas Forestry Association. Now, we're doing something a little bit different this month. We're going to have two different guest speakers, but they're not going to be at the same time. I know usually you guys are used to having, when we have two speakers, two of them here at the same time, kind of taking turns speaking. But we're going to do two different speakers, one here on the front half, the other end on the second half after our guest ad. But just bear with me on this. We're doing something a little bit different, and I hope you guys will enjoy. But before I introduce our first guest, I want to give a special shout-out and a thank you to our sponsors this month, Neely Forestry Service. We're going to hear a little bit more from them later on in the episode. Now, our first guest this month is Garrick Dugger, the division chief here at the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission. We're kind of doing a focus on private lands, and we're going to start here with the discussion on the private lands division here at the Game and Fish Commission. So, Garrick, thank you so much, man, for joining me today.
I appreciate you having me, Seth.
I know this was kind of a voluntold situation for me, but I hope you'll, hop in with vigor and excitement as we run through this little conversation here.
Absolutely. I'm excited about being here.
Good, man. Well, I tell you what, before we hop into the private lands division, why don't you just tell people kind of who you are and your background a little bit?
Yeah. I've been with the Game and Fish for 24 years, and I've done a little bit of everything from extra labor to field biologist to private lands biologist. And I was over in eastern Arkansas for, I think, almost 14 years, and over about 10 counties over there, all of our public lands. And then I came to Little Rock and oversaw all of our public lands in eastern Arkansas and our waterfowl programs and our wetlands programs for about 4 or 5 years. And then last October, I became the division chief of our private lands division. It's a new division. It's not a new program, but it's a new division, and it's a new focus on private lands here in the state.
Okay, cool. Well, let's hop into it then. I know this is kind of, I mentioned we're going to focus this month kind of on private lands. So what is this new private lands divisions that you guys have going on?
So Seth, we've had a private lands program since 1996 when the conservation sales tax passed. And we've had about 9 to 10 private lands biologists across the state since that time. But those biologists have always been under the umbrella of our wildlife management division, who oversees all of our public lands and our regulations. And so there's never been a true focus on private lands with the staff that's truly just, that's all they do is private land work. And so with Natural State Tomorrow, our new strategic plan for the agency, it's a 5-year plan. There's a huge focus in that plan for private lands due to the fact that there's 90% of Arkansas is privately owned. And so if we're going to do conservation work, if we're going to do a lot of conservation work to move the needle for wildlife resources, we're going to have to do it on private lands. And so the director and our commission really felt like in order to do that, we needed a new private land. We needed to create a private lands division. And the hope is, the real hope is, and my goal is over the next 5 years is grow capacity. So like I said, since 1996, we've had private lands biologists, and I was one of those. Between 2002 and 2005, I was a private lands biologist in eastern Arkansas. And the problem is we've only had 9 or 10 of those for the state, and there's 75 counties. So each one of our private lands biologists cover about 6 to 8 counties. And so as you can imagine, there's lots of landowners in those 5 or 6 counties that wanting help from a private lands biologist to manage their property for wildlife. And we just simply can't get around to all of them and develop relationships. And I, when I got this job, Seth, one of the things I told the commission and the director the day I got the job is, one is we grow capacity. That equals time. Time equals relationships. Relationships equals trust. And trust equals habitat on the ground. Without capacity, we never can spend the time that we need to spend the time with the landowners to develop a relationship and trust. And when you start talking about cutting trees and burning on private properties, you have to have the trust of the landowner. And so that takes time to develop. And when you only have, 8 to 10 biologists across the state, it just don't lend itself well. So the director and this commission is very, very dedicated towards growing capacity. And we can, when the next guest comes on, he'll talk about a program within our private lands division that he's going to try to grow. And over the next 3 to 5 years, my goal is, and I think it's the director's goal, is to have at least 20 to 30 private lands biologists across the state to deliver this work.
We talk a lot about trust and kind of relationships here on this show. Mainly, nothing gets done unless people reach out and start asking questions and form those relationships. So how important it is the trust that you guys need to build with these private landowners.
Seth, it's everything. I mean, without trust, you will not get a private landowner to implement what you're asking them to do on their property to meet their goals. So one of the main things is when we meet with a landowner, first thing we ask is what is your goals? What is your objectives for your property? If it's a recreational property, a lot of times it's truly let's manage it for maximum wildlife habitat. If it's a working farm, then they've got to make money on it, and so there's multiple objectives. But so we asked them what their goals are. Once we learn what their goals are, we will do a site visit and actually look at their property with them. Usually we spend 2 to 3 hours per site visit, riding around their farm, talking to the landowner, and then we will write a management plan based on their goals and objectives. The problem is, Seth, is that if that's the only site visit and the only time we talk to that landowner and we give them a management plan and a map, most of the time, a lot of that stuff's not implemented because they just don't trust us. And if they don't know who we are, they don't know where our background is from, and they don't understand that what we're trying to prescribe is what we do on our own properties, what we do for fun on the weekends. And so time equals relationships, and relationships equals trust, and trust equals habitat. I truly believe that the only landowners that, when I was a private lands biologist, the only landowners that I truly made an impact on were the ones that I spent a lot at with. And that was multiple site visits, multiple phone calls. Sometimes I even eat with the family for lunch. And then at that point, we started getting habitat on the ground. And so that's the key for us. And I just, I've told the director and our commissioners that, and they understand this. Capacity is everything. And so we're going to grow capacity. And that's why we created this new division. And I'm super excited about being the leader of this opportunity.
So explain to me the process. Are you guys out making cold calls with landowners, or what exactly is the step-by-step process to kind of get this in motion?
So I'll just talk about my own experience. Seth, success breeds success. And so when you have a successful project, landowners at the coffee shop, they're talking, and it don't take long as a private lands biologist. You start year 1, by year 3, you're wanting to quit because your phone will not quit ringing. So it is, we do not make cold calls, and we do not, we do have some marketing that we do through our private lands Facebook page, but it's really word of mouth. It definitely is something that we don't struggle with getting phone calls. We get more phone calls than we can deal with.
Okay, so people need to come to you guys and say, "Hey, I kind of want to. I'm interested in this. What do I need to do to kind of get involved with this division?"
Absolutely. Instead, we've got a Game and Fish has a website, and under the Wildlife Management tab, there's a Private Lands tab. And under that private lands tab is everything private lands. So you can find a private lands biologist. Like I said, we currently have 11 across the state. And so that map is there with their contact information. So if you're interested in having a private lands biologist come out and look at your property for forest management, for wildlife management, talk about how to increase your property's value for wildlife, whether it's turkeys, quail, deer, or waterfowl, our staff has the knowledge and has the expertise to come out and help you through that process.
So, and we'll make sure that we get that link in the description of this episode for you guys. And anybody listening that is curious, if you're here in Arkansas and you're a private lands owner, you can check the description of this episode and find a link to get to that webpage and get some more information, like I said, if you're interested. Now, Garrick, one thing I do kind of want to talk about is, it's good to get a management plan, but not every landowner has necessarily the money to spend to enact some of the things that you guys are suggesting they do on their property. Do you guys do anything to kind of help get them the financial assistance that they might need to enact some of that stuff?
Absolutely. So, our bread and butter, Seth, is doing site visits and technical assistance, providing a landowner some guidance on how to manage their forest, their wetlands, whatever habitat that they're created, how to manage them for maximizing that property for wildlife. But we understand not everyone has money to pour into their property to build fire breaks, to do timber stand improvement, stuff that don't make them money. It's hard to pour money into property sometimes. And so we have lots of different programs. Our staff is well trained on the federal farm bill programs that the NRCS offers. And there's a host of programs out there that will do that will do wildlife habitat restoration. So we do that. We try to hook them up with NRCS programs when it's available or when it's the right program. But we also have one state program that's really been successful. So, like we said, I mean, the director, our commission, standing up this new division. They not only stood up the new division, but they also put a lot of money into the new division. So, Acres for Wildlife has been around for over 50 years, and it's been revitalized to all different types of different programs, from a seed packet program to cost share program to really doing native warm season grasses and herbicide work. But this year, when we started the new division, we went from a $170,000 budget to over a $500,000 budget, and so we had over 167 landowners enroll and apply for the program, and we just awarded 87 landowners. And some of those practices that the landowners were awarded financial assistance on was forest inventory.
Okay.
So before we know how we want to change your forest, we want to know what you have on the land right now. So we actually cost shared on a forest inventory. We're also cost sharing on forest stand improvement, so doing some hack and squirt with chemicals. We're also helping landowners with fire breaks, whether it's a disc line, whether it's a hand line or dozer line. So all that money so the program was from May 15th to July 1 was the application period. So those that are listening, I mean, next year we've already spent all of our money for this year, but next year that program will be back out. And so if you're interested in that, give one of our private lands biologists a call for sure. And
it sounds like you've got a decent shot as a private landowner. Y'all said y'all had 100 and something people, and 87-ish got. So I mean, that's a good ratio of folks there. So
167 people applied. We had a ranking criteria, and 87 people were funded, and that was all the money that we had. And then the other program that I want to mention, Seth, before we get off here, is the Conservation Tax Credit Program. This is a program that our director took over to the legislative session this past General Assembly and got a bill introduced for a tax credit. That tax credit did not go through, but we're going to stand up a pilot program come January 1. So for those people listening that didn't know about Acres for Wildlife that are interested in doing some habitat work, where you're talking about forest management, where you're talking about wetland management, if you've got a rice field that you would be willing to put service water on during the winter and flood it for waterfowl, we're gonna have cost share money for all those different practices. That program will be stood up in January 1, and it'll be a calendar year program. It's a pilot program. The hope is we get a multi-million-dollar tax credit program started in Arkansas for people that are interested in doing wildlife habitat work. And so that's a way, I think, we talked about it earlier about moving the needle in Arkansas for conservation. We feel like that a tax credit would be available, a state tax credit would be available for all landowners across the state that owns property that want to do good work for wildlife, but may just not have the money to do it. Well, this would be an incentive on a tax end of it to do the work for wildlife, and then you get a tax break on the end of it. Okay. So, and also the other side of that is we're hoping to build some private industry around these practices, that if the work is out there, that the private industry will build around that. So,
okay. Awesome.
So the conservation, we're going to call it the conservation program. It's going to be a multi-million-dollar program this next year. The Acres for Wildlife is a program that's been around. It's a state program, but so yeah, that's to me. When we talk about our private lands division and we talk about growing capacity, we also got to talk about can we put money out there that people can go get and spend it on good, solid habitat work.
Okay, awesome. Now, Garrick, before we kind of wrap this first half up, I kind of want to ask you this question, and it might be a little bit of a curveball, so bear with me. Setting aside the fact that there's a game and fish commissioner in the room with us right now, and this is your job, why is it that you want to see this division succeed? What is it that you're wanting to see happen in the state of Arkansas with this division? So, Seth, I've been here 24 years, and I've got 4 or 5 years left in my career, and my main goal for this division is capacity. I mean, I was a private lands biologist in 2000, in the early 2000s for 4 or 5 years, and
it's really overwhelming as a biologist to try to cover 6 to 8 counties. And so I know the opportunity is out there on private lands, and so we only have 300-something thousand acres of public land in Arkansas that Game and Fish actually manages and owns. We lease some, and we partner with other people on other properties, but we own actually about 300,000 acres. That's a finite number. But there's a whole other part of Arkansas out there. 90% of it's privately owned. So if we're going to move the needle for conservation, we're going to do it on private lands. Whether we're talking about the collared lizard, or we're talking about quail, or we're talking about white-tailed deer, the opportunity to manage for those species is on private lands. In order to do that, in my opinion, my biggest goal over the next 3 to 5 years is to grow this division where we can get to more landowners, get more technical advice out there, teach people how to manage their property. So on that same note, Seth, when we started this new division, we created 4 priorities based on the our natural state tomorrow strategic plan for the agency. We based our 4 priorities on that plan. The priorities for our division is fire and forest management, creating and restoring wetland habitat, and then our deer management assistant program. And then we're gonna focus some habitat work in our conservation opportunity areas. But the first priority is fire and forest management. If you go across the state of Arkansas, most of our forest is overstocked. That's really, you grow a lot of fox squirrels in overstocked forest, but because there's no sunlight hitting the ground, there's no forage on the ground, and so you just don't have what wildlife needs for the most part. So we're interested in trying to figure out a way to move forest products and put fire on the landscape. If we can do those 2 things on private lands at a rate that we've not seen before, our wildlife will be the beneficiaries of all of that. And so that's our whole mission as the Arkansas Game and Fish, is to manage fish and wildlife and their habitats. That's our main goal. And in order to do that, we got to do it on private lands. And I think the biggest, one of the biggest priorities for us is figure out forest management, reduce the stalking rates of our forest, and get prescribed fire on the ground. Those are 2 big challenges. I'm not going to lie to you. The forest industry is a big challenge, and fire is a big challenge. But that's where I'm at currently as a division chief of our private lands division.
Well, I've spoken to a lot of folks on this episode, or on this show alone, and you've got a lot of folks in your corner already to kind of ready to help out and make some of those dreams a reality. So it sounds like you guys are in a good spot already. Well, Garrick, is there anything else you want to add or you want to say before we wrap this up and move on to our second guest?
Yeah, I just want to mention that we talk about capacity a lot during this episode, and I do want to give a shout out to Quail Forever. We partner with Quail Forever, and we have 8 biologists that we partner on, and they're across the state as well, and that can help private landowners. And they're really focused on more upland habitat. So if you've got some habitat that you're looking for, to early successional, you're looking to manage for quail, or you need some help with cattle grazing operations, our QF partners are really have been a great help trying to get to more private landowners across state. So we do have 8 biologists with QF, and then we also partner with DU on a wetlands biologist. And he's out of Northeast Arkansas, and he helps us with wetland type habitat projects on private lands.
Cool. All right. Well, Garrick, if there's nothing else, man, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Again, I know you're voluntold to do this, but I think we got a lot of good information about the division and kind of what people can expect.
I appreciate the opportunity, Seth. If anybody's got any questions, please go to agfc.com and find the private lands page, and all that information is there.
Yeah. And like I said, we'll have that linked here in the description of this episode, so folks listening can find that pretty easy. Well, guys, before we introduce our next guest, I want to take a quick moment. We're going to kick it on over to our sponsors this month and hear a little bit more from them. That's Neely Forestry Service. Since 1972, Neely Forestry Service has been a part of forestry in Arkansas, providing a broad spectrum of services including forest management, including timber sales and silvicultural activities. With 5 registered foresters, 2 licensed certified general appraisers, 1 state-registered apprentice appraiser, and 4 licensed real estate agents on staff, Neely Forestry Service has the experience to help landowners make the best decisions for their land. To get in touch with them, you can visit NeelyForestryService.com or call 870-836-5981. Neely Forestry Service, managing forests from one generation to the next. Thank you again to Neely Forestry Service for their support of this episode. So, guys, we are back with our second guest, and we're kind of moving into one of the programs underneath the private lands division that they offer. And I want to kind of say this, too, before we hop into any further discussion. We're talking about the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission. This is a very Arkansas kind of centric show, but we wanted to have this discussion to kind of show what at least our state is doing in regards to private lands and a focus on those private lands. So take this with a grain of salt. If you're out of the country, out of the state, this is what Arkansas is doing, and could potentially be replicated in other places. But we're talking about where we live currently. So we're moving on to our second guest, which is Jeremy Brown here at the Game and Fish Commission. He is the Deer Management Assistant Program Coordinator. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm tickled to be here. Thanks for having me.
No worries. And so, Jeremy, kind of what we did with Garrick, if you don't mind just kind of letting people know who you are, a little bit of your background.
Sure. I've been with the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission for a little over 15 years now, almost 16. I actually started out in public lands as a WMA manager. Did that for a couple of years, well, I guess about 4 or 5 years, and then I got into the deer program. Worked under the deer program, which is in the wildlife management divisions, for almost 6 years through there, helping to manage all the deer across the state there. And then up until this past March, April-ish is when I got the opportunity to become the agency's first ever DMAP coordinator. So we've had DMAP in the agency for a while, 20 plus years, but it's just kind of been a program that we've all team tackled and just it was part of our jobs, and now it's got a lot of sole focus on deer management and assisting our private landowners in the state. And
now you mentioned to me off air that this was more of a revitalization. You kind of see it as this revitalization of this program. Why was there a push to see this program kind of put or revitalize and give a focus on private landowners? Yeah, so over the years, I've been here a little over 15 years, but this program actually was called the Deer Management Assistance Program back in 2001. We had a deer tag program before then, a deer camp program before that, but the focus was really on bullets. It was when we manage deer in the states, you can manage them through habitat and through how many mouths you have to feed, the population or the herd. Well, you can take your deer herd and remove or add the appropriate amount of numbers to make it match the habitat to get to your carrying capacity, or you could take your habitat alone and manage it, make more of it, take less away to match the number of mouths that you feed. But it's best to do them in conjunction with one another. It helps everybody get to their goal faster and meet the needs we need to. So historically, DMAP was focused a lot on giving extra tags to remove deer in certain areas that needed to remove deer. And we were really focused on matching the number of mouths to feed on the landscape to what the habitat just existed. Now that we're pulled out and we're revitalizing, we've really ramped up the habitat component to where it's not just shooting a bunch of deer. We're working with landowners now to make their habitat better, rolling out the red carpet for these deer, increasing that nutritional plane. So that's kind of an exciting part of this revitalization part of the program. Is we did habitat in the past, but there was a capacity issue. We couldn't get around everybody and we couldn't get that attention that was needed there.
It's one thing to go to a landowner and tell them to thin their timber, that they got too much overstory, or you can hand them a match and say, light this and burn it. They're probably not going to do it. We didn't have that time, and now with this revitalization, we're devoting that time and trying to do better and grow the program that way, building the trust with the landowners, spending more time with them, giving them more handshakes, and getting our boots a little bit more dirty and walking them through this together.
So is this kind of a similar process to what Garrick was discussing, where you guys meet with the landowner and kind of go over their property and just with a sole focus on deer management?
It is. That's the initial get-go. You know, when we get a call in, hey, we're a technical assistance program, so we're going to try our best to answer their questions over the phone, but you're really going to get into the nuts and bolts of this is by doing a site visit. And so we want to meet with them and do a little ride around with them and see what they're dealing with. I mean, they can have a lot of deer, but if they got good habitat, that's probably why they got a lot of deer. And just see where they're at in that phase of deer management. You want to understand what the landowner wants. We try to take our time to understand their goals. If they want a lot of deer, well, that's a whole different management approach than it is if they want big deer. Normally big antler-sized deer don't go with a high deer density, and we try to help them understand that, whether it's through you need to shoot more of this and less of that, or it's, hey, you just need to do more habitat management techniques to fire is a great example. Most of the land hasn't seen fire at quite the rotation it needs to be, and a simple 3-year rotation of burning can put enough groceries on the ground to supply a lot of the food that's needed for these deer herds. But it don't just stop at deer. I mean, really, deer is the foot in the door. We talked earlier, it's kind of the show pony of this. It goes above and beyond that. Deer is what we really use as our bread and butter. We build our trust, and because we brought back deer in this state. It's a huge success story. But we've got other critters out there that needs brought back or needs some help along the way. And the management that we do for deer helps other species. So it's our foot in the door to say, hey, I've noticed you've got a fine 80 acres off over here that looks like that could be potential quail habitat. If we do this type of habitat work, it's really going to help your quail, and deer love this same type of work too. The response you're going to get. So that's kind of what we do in this program. Our biologists are designed and trained to identify what assets that a piece of property has and maximize it for deer, but also other wildlife species to grow other programs.
Well, it's that symbiotic relationship a little bit, right?
That's
where,
right.
We help the land, which helps the deer, which helps so on and so forth. Just a trickle effect to other smaller critters here on the landscape.
That's right.
So, Jeremy, I guess this might sound like a stupid question, but I want to ask you anyways. If I was a landowner, why is this something that I would be interested in? Why would this be something I would want to contact you guys about to get someone out to my property?
Well, there's several benefits through DMAP. If you're ever interested in any type of quality deer management principles, that's kind of the going thing in deer management. Once we got out of the late 90s, it was QDM, that quality deer management ideology. We teach that through here. You do learn and benefit by knowing the importance of balancing sex ratios in a deer herd and also balancing habitat versus deer herd needs. So, and it also helps with disease control. You're going to learn how to prevent and help control the spread of diseases throughout the state there. So those are very important benefits that the program offers to you. But not only that, it offers that landowner a foot in the door, because our biologists are not only trained in helping with that, but we are aware and also trained on what other financial programs that are out there that could help them put this project on the ground and help them financially. Whether it's going to identify a spot for, say, food plots, or they're just needing some chemical applications to manage some native grasses and forbs, we can go through the Acres for Wildlife program and use that as a cost share program to help them get work done. So it's an avenue. This program is an avenue that fosters financial assistance on the back end of things to help them get work done.
Which is a big hurdle for a lot of folks.
It is.
It is. it's easy, like we mentioned earlier, it's easy to be handed a list of things to do, but if you don't have the money to do them, that's just
right.
a piece of paper with some words on it at that point, you know. Well, Jeremy, what are some of the things? I know we're getting close to hunting season right now. What are some of the things that you guys are talking to landowners about currently? We're in, what is this? We're coming into September here in 2023. So what are some of the things that you guys are speaking with landowners about right now?
Yeah, so September is our crunch time. We call it report time.
Mm-hmm.
So we're basically working with the participants that's already enrolled in DMAP. This is our mail outs. We're getting our reports to them. We're telling them what they done last year, how well they done. It's kind of giving them the report card on this is what you done, and then we give them this year's management plan and telling them our recommendations on what we want them to do for this upcoming season. Just like all of us, I mean, we got cool weather right now. When I woke up and it was 63 degrees this morning, I couldn't tell you I wanted to be 20 foot up a tree deer hunting somewhere. But so that's what the timeline we're in right now is, working with them, getting them their harvest reports, telling them what they need to be focusing on as far as harvest for this year. Winding down any of the habitat recommendations, like summertime food plots is needs to be done, and wrapping up and trying to get cool season food plots in at this time. So that's the messages we're communicating to our existing participants. But at the same time, we're holding workshops, not only to educate our current participants, but also to solicit participation in the program and just give technical assistance in general. One thing I hadn't mentioned yet is what's important is this is a completely free program.
Yeah, that's very important. Yeah.
That's offered, and so it's just a lot of people. Over 90% of the state, or nearly 90% of the state, is privately owned. But not all of them are deer managers, and they want to get certain things out of their deer and or their habitat, and that's what we're here for, is to help them reach those goals together.
Okay. And I guess just for people who are interested in signing up, is it just going to that website that Garrick mentioned earlier, and is the information all there?
Yeah, we have our DMAP has its own website.
Okay.
It's at the same, housed at the same one, agfc.com, and it's /DMAP, and that'll take you right to the page, and there's tabs on how to enroll. There's tons of information on different levels of participation. It'll explain that, hey, maybe you're just a landowner that has a whole bunch of deer and you got too many and you're wanting to remove some. We have a level for that, DMAP level 1A, and then we've got DMAPs levels 1, 2, and 3, and they're kind of tier-based on what your goal is, on how strict you want to be with your deer herd, whether you're just wanting to enjoy deer hunting and see as many deer as you can. Well, that would be DMAP level 1. That's our basic deer management. And then you got quality deer management, DMAP level 2, which gets a little bit more strict. It still provides a moderate harvest of bucks, but it really promotes a increased harvest of does, and so you're trying to move your deer to an older age class. That typically climaxes at around that 3.5 age class. And then level 3 that's for our avid, that's our intensive folks. That's an intensive level there, and that you're really focusing on bucks to reach the very most utmost mature level that we can. Those age classes are going to peak out at around 5.5, something, maybe 4.5 or 5.5 years of age. But that's going to be a very selective amount of bucks you take off the property with a very high amount of does, because you're trying to match that number of mouths you're feeding to the carrying capacity of your habitat.
Okay.
And so that you'll find all that information in detail on our website. Gives examples of our data that we collect. That's a large part of this program is we provide that technical assistance to the clubs, but in return, what we're getting is data from them, and that data is critical not only to the DMAP program but to the state, because that data goes into our strategic whitetail deer management plan that helps us manage deer on the landscape statewide. Just like we mentioned, nearly 90% of the land's private land, so nearly 80 to 90% of our data comes from private land, but rightfully so. So it helps us manage those deer across the state, whether it's at the deer zone level or the deer management unit level, like the geographical regions like the Ozarks, the Ouachitas, the Mississippi Alluvial Valley. So we got different scales that we manage at based off the data that these clubs provide for us.
So you're helping the clubs with the landowners, and they're helping you guys with an overall Arkansas kind of outlook when it comes to deer.
That's right.
So, Jeremy, you've talked a lot about kind of some of the stuff that you guys are doing and some of the things you're talking to landowners about, but what are some of the issues that you guys are seeing out on the landscape when it comes to managing for deer?
Well, a couple of the issues we are always dealing with is most of the, I won't say most, but a good portion of our troubles and hurdles that we're trying to overcome is small land parcels. Mm-hmm. Part of being in the program, we require a 500-acre minimum to enroll, but that's because we're trying to reach a landscape level management. And when you got several different small parcels, a 40 here, a 120 there, or a 300 there, it's hard to get consistent management on the landscape. So that's a hurdle that we try to work with co-ops and push a DMAP co-op where you join your neighbors together, get them like-minded, kind of get them educated up and join forces, form a DMAP co-op. They can join as one club and then divvy out the tags and the management. We'll do the management plan for all of them.
Yeah.
But that's one thing we always have to try to do. And then a lot of them, my neighbor over here likes to bait, but this one don't like to bait. And so you always have to give some guidance on that. And so, some of the hurdles we do is try to overcome some of the, what's the best way to go about doing it? How can the landowner save money? If you want to really save money, you becomes a lot more efficient. You got options. Like, let me look at it this way. You can bait, supplemental feed. You can do food plots, supplemental food plots, and then you can manage your native habitat. Now, that's three ways of providing a forage or providing a food and providing protein to your deer, but there's three different costs there. And it's by far more efficient and effective to manage native habitat through thinning and burning or whatnot. I mean, I think there was a research study that come out that I remember. It's like 27 times more costly to provide supplemental feed to get the same benefit that it would be to manage your native habitat. But we fully realize, and one of the key aspects of this program is not every landowner that we work with has the liberty to manage their habitat. Some of them are leases that they can't do thin and burns on. Some of them are timber company lands that they don't allow any type of manipulations to the timber. So when you deal with that, we kind of talk about alternatives, which is your food plots, and that's kind of the middle of the pack there as far as cost benefits. You get a good benefit, and it's a little bit more expensive than managing your native habitat, but it's by far cheaper than supplemental feeding. And then, aside from food plots is, some folks are going to bait and feed because it's just become tradition in some deer camps and now, and that's fine. I'm not here to change your tradition, but at the same token, there is good ways and bad ways to doing it. And, things that we try to help them with is try to avoid putting that mineral lick or that salt lick out and pouring a 50-pound sack in one spot and leaving it there the whole year and making it a permanent spot. It's good to rotate those things around, move them around, and spread bait out. Don't try to centralize or congregate them into one exact position. Much more like a food plot does. A food plot, they may come into a 3-acre food plot, but they're spread out in that food plot. They're not coming to one thing and always reoccurring that one spot. So those are things you can look at. Of course, you got other things about temporary bait sites. I kind of push that a lot. I don't like long-term permanent spots where you see pictures of these craters that's in the ground where a salt lick's been there for 20 years and they want to hunt it because it's been there for that long. That, in my mind, is a very big cesspool of disease waiting to happen because you're drawing in large quantities of deer to one spot. All it takes is one bad apple to infect them. So anytime you can rotate or just temporary bait in a spot and then move to a new location, that's much better than those long-term permanent.
Well, that's a good thing that we kind of brought this up then, because it shows that I'm sure there are folks out there. My grandfather was a hunter, and he's got his traditions, and he sticks to them. Boy, you're not going to get him away from them. So people who are like that, who do the baiting and the food plotting, there is kind of a place for them here in this program as well. And it's you guys providing education on stuff like this, on the dangers of leaving it there in that one spot for God knows how long.
Yep, that's what our guys are there to help with. Is if you're in that CWD zone, if our guys are there to help. Say, hey, look, we need to stop baiting, but these are other ways. We've been on your property, and these are other ways that you can reach that goal and still attract those deer to that spot. Sometimes it's just changing the bait up and not using corn. Maybe it's using something different that's not going to draw in the aflatoxins. There's some recent studies that's come out that says that deer really like milo when they don't have near the aflatoxin rates that corn has. So it's just small tweaks that the landowners themselves may not come across on a daily basis. That's what our program's there to help them with.
Okay. Well, Jeremy, one thing I want to ask you a similar question I asked Garrick when we were talking here earlier. But again, don't look at the commissioner. Forget it. This is your job. Why is this something that you want to see succeed? What is it about this program that makes you excited about this new position? I guess, in a very crass way, why do you care?
Well, I'm stoked because I'm an avid deer hunter, just sportsman in general. This is something I'm going to do whether I've got this job or not. I'm always at the coffee shop talking deer management, so this is in me. It's what's going to happen. But what I'm excited about this position is, currently we're sitting at well over 650 clubs now since we just went through our enrollment period. So I'm getting the opportunity to touch over 650 deer clubs, not people, deer clubs. We're talking to the tune of 1.3 million acres and hopefully growing and continuing to grow. And we were bigger in the past. And we've kind of went and shrunk quantity to go for quantity. And so what I'm excited about is taking this high-quality program, continuing to provide a very high-quality product to the customers, and growing it and making it bigger. So growing it quantity and quality together and trying to reach as many acres as possible so we can all enjoy the deer herd. And we always hear it every year. Well, I used to have deer and I don't, and now I'm this person. Sometimes it's granny's mad that her flyers are disappearing because there's too many deer, and I feel like this program is an all-encompassing program that really touches about every person or every club in Arkansas.
Okay. Well, Jeremy, is there anything else, man, you want to say or you want to add before we wrap this up?
Not really. I just encourage folks to go to agfc.com/DMAP for any more information. We've got DMAP biologists across the state in each region. Reach out to them, ask questions. We can't help you unless we know who you are and what you need.
We always say, if you got a question, there's always someone out there willing to help, especially here in the state of Arkansas. Folks like Jeremy, folks like Garrick are very willing and excited to help make sure you guys are doing the right thing on your properties.
Absolutely.
So, Jeremy, thank you so much, man. We appreciate you joining us today as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
We want to thank you guys for joining us as well. Another special thank you and shout out to this month's sponsor, Neely Forestry Service. We thank them for their continued support of the show. And as always, we want to give a shout out and a thank you to some guy named Rob /Rob McCormick for the use of our theme song, The Same Love. That's off of his album, The Folkster. You can find a link to his website with more of his music, and you can find it on Spotify if you're a Spotify user. And make sure you join us next month when we'll have a new topic, a new discussion, and a new Voice of Forestry.